Where are you headed?
Westwood.
Hop in.
Thanks.
What brings you to Westwood?
It's my friend's birthday. It's a surprise.
You gotta love surprises. You gonna do what I say? There is no more Colleen Stan. You will answer to Kay. You will address me as master and my wife as ma'am.
What is this?
It's a contract. It formalizes your status as my slave.
You're only here to take the pain.
The film begins late at night as Cameron and Janice Hooker, a married couple, venture into a dark forest to conceal a lifeless body. Janice, filled with fear and guilt, clutches her prayer beads tightly, while her callous husband Cameron attempts to reassure her, insisting that it was an accident and they never intended to harm anyone. After they bury the body, they hastily depart the scene before dawn breaks. The narrative then jumps ahead a year, introducing a young woman named Colleen Stan, who is trying to hitchhike to Westwood, California. Eventually, a couple drives along the same road Cameron and Janice. Colleen asks for a ride, and they willingly oblige. During the trip, the couple engages Colleen in conversation, learning that she plans to surprise her best friend in Westwood, a secret she has kept to herself. This revelation seems to please Cameron, prompting him to stop at a gas station for a break. While Colleen heads to the restroom, Cameron ominously retrieves a wooden box from the trunk and places it in the backseat of the car. Colleen returns shortly and notices the box but dismisses it without concern. They resume their journey, and Cameron proposes a detour to visit the ice caves before reaching Westwood. Although Colleen is hesitant, wanting to arrive in California before nightfall, she ultimately agrees due to a lack of alternatives. Soon after, they stop in a secluded area. Janice leads the way to the caves, but Colleen begins to feel uneasy. Suddenly, Cameron brandishes a knife, pressing it against her neck. He blindfolds her, handcuffs her, and forces her back into the car. As if that were not enough, he places her head inside the wooden box to prevent her from seeing their destination. In the following scene, the couple takes Colleen to their home in Red Bluff. Upon arrival, Cameron disrobes the unfortunate girl and restrains her. He then savagely lashes out at her while Janice observes in horror. Cameron derives pleasure from the violence and the screams, revealing his psychopathic tendencies. Once he concludes his activities for the day, Cameron secures Colleen to a table and forces her head back into the box. This leaves her confined and in a state of terror. The following morning, Janice approaches her husband with anxiety, seeking clarification on their intentions regarding Colleen. Cameron responds that they will dispose of her when he no longer finds her entertaining. He then departs for work, leaving Janice to grapple with her uncertainties and fears. Throughout the day, the sound of Colleen's anguished cries disrupts Janice's fleeting moments of tranquility, prompting her to go downstairs to address the situation. Colleen begs for her release, assuring Janice that she will remain silent about everything if they let her go. Despite Colleen's desperate entreaties, Janice remains unmoved and simply walks away. Later that evening, Cameron returns home, attending to Colleen's basic needs while simultaneously inflicting harm upon her. Unable to endure the heart-wrenching screams, Janice puts on headphones at a high volume, likely listening to Imagine Dragons. After Cameron tires of his cruel behavior, he retires for the night. Before he can drift off to sleep, Janice approaches him with her concerns. She expresses her belief that keeping Colleen with them is a precarious decision, likening her to a ticking time bomb. However, Cameron dismisses Janice's worries entirely, reminding her of the vows she made during their marriage. He assures her that he has no intention of becoming intimate with Colleen, as he merely wishes to use her as a slave to satisfy his own needs and desires. Later, at midnight, Cameron constructs a coffin-like box and cruelly confines Colleen within it. He also attaches an oxygen tube to the coffin, enabling the victim to breathe and stay alive. Confined within the suffocating enclosure, Colleen's thoughts drift into a world of hallucinations. Yearning for liberation, regrets flit through her mind as she remembers her father's advice to take the bus, a suggestion she had immediately dismissed. In the meantime, Colleen's parents discover her disappearance when her landlord informs them of her unpaid rent. Alarmed, they rush to the police, seeking answers with urgency. The narrative then jumps forward 6 months, revealing that Colleen remains captive under the couple's control. One day, Janice visits Cameron at his workplace and discloses her pregnancy. She proposes the idea of releasing Colleen, expressing concern that their situation could negatively impact their child. However, Cameron quickly dismisses the notion, deeming it too perilous. Subsequently, Cameron concocts a malevolent scheme to instill terror in Colleen and thwart any attempts at her escape. He deceives her by claiming to be affiliated with a company engaged in the slave trade. Cameron heartlessly declares that Colleen is his property and warns her that if she tries to escape, the company will capture her and impose severe repercussions. To heighten her fear, he fabricates tales of the company's brutal treatment, even threatening her family with harm should she attempt to flee. As Colleen's anxiety escalates, Cameron coerces her into signing fraudulent documents that promise her safety and protection from the slave trading organization. Janice, who is desperate to have a child, goes along with the deception. She remains silent when Cameron asserts that she was once a slave as well, but he married her out of compassion. The next day, Cameron prepares Colleen by dressing her and fastening a collar around her neck. He renames her Kay and insists that she must view him and Janice as her masters, obeying their every command. He instructs Colleen that whenever he calls for her attention, she must promptly go to a specified location, remove her gown, and raise her hand. As anticipated, the frightened girl complies without hesitation. Later, while performing her cleaning tasks, Colleen discovers a Bible and attempts to read it, but Janice arrives just in time to snatch it away from her. Janice then reminds Colleen of her perceived worthlessness, insisting that her only purpose is to endure suffering. Months later, when the landlord asks Cameron if he can inspect the furnace, Cameron becomes anxious and informs his wife that they need to relocate. Shortly thereafter, Janice gives birth to a baby girl, whom they name Amber, with only Cameron present to assist her during labor. After some time, Colleen is briefly allowed to see the child, and although she is quickly sent back, she feels joy at having met the baby girl. A year later, the malicious couple moves to a location far from the city. One evening at dinner, Janice discovers that Colleen has not set a fork for her. Furious, she accuses the girl of being lazy and deceitful, claiming she is worthless. Cameron also becomes enraged and punishes her severely. However, Janice later learns that the fork had simply fallen to the floor, which fills her with guilt. The following morning, Cameron frightens Colleen with a tale about a slave who was killed for attempting to escape, reminding her of how fortunate she is to have him as her master. It appears he is preparing to take her outside. A few days later, Cameron removes Colleen's collar and dresses her in ordinary clothing. He then takes her out to collect firewood in the mountains, which brings her happiness. This marks the first time she has left the house in years. Colleen inquires if she might return home one day, but Cameron responds that it is unlikely. Later, while gathering firewood, Cameron accidentally injures himself with an axe and collapses to the ground. In that moment, Colleen sees the perfect opportunity to escape. However, she hesitates and chooses to assist him. Upon their return home, she cares for his injury, but Janice grows envious and insists on handling it herself. As the couple prepares for bed, Janice attempts to initiate intimacy, but Cameron rebuffs her advances. Feeling neglected, she erupts in anger, accusing him of favoring the slave over her. She storms out of the room, commanding Cameron to return Colleen to the box and to refrain from ever touching her again. 3 years go by, and Colleen remains imprisoned under the control of Cameron and Janice. On one occasion, Janice momentarily frees her from the box to empty her urinal, allowing Colleen to catch a glimpse of Amber. Now a young woman, this sight prompts her to ponder how many years have elapsed since her abduction. One day, the family decides to visit Lake Tahoe, leaving Colleen confined in her box. Tragically, while they are away, a malfunction in the ventilation system causes Colleen to suffocate, leading her to experience intense hallucinations. She eventually awakens and desperately kicks the box until it breaks open. Later, the family returns from their trip to the lake. Cameron goes to check on Colleen, only to be shocked to find her missing. He searches the house frantically, hoping she is still there. To his relief, he discovers Colleen hiding behind the shower, clutching a Bible. As he prepares to punish her, she candidly explains the issue with the broken ventilation. The narrative then jumps forward 5 years, during which Colleen has integrated into the family. One day, Janice and Colleen attend church together. However, the priest's sermon resonates deeply with Janice, stirring painful memories of her past errors. Overcome with guilt, she trembles with anxiety, but Colleen reaches out and takes her hand, providing comfort and support. As time goes on, Janice finds it increasingly challenging to tolerate her husband's abusive behavior. She also develops a growing empathy for Colleen and becomes increasingly worried about Amber's future. After a year has passed, Cameron brings thrilling news to Colleen. The company has granted her permission to visit her home. This announcement brings her immense joy, but Cameron stresses that she must complete obedience training before she can see her family. Soon after, he takes her outside and hands her a shotgun. He instructs her to aim the barrel at her own mouth and pull the trigger. With tears streaming down her face, the frightened girl complies without resistance. Fortunately, the weapon does not fire, and Colleen survives the traumatic experience. The following morning, Cameron drives Colleen to her parents' residence. During the ride, he mentions the significant expenses he has incurred to facilitate this visit, leading Colleen to express her appreciation. Upon arriving, just as Colleen is about to embrace her family, Cameron reminds her of the company's ongoing surveillance, advising her to be careful and avoid any errors. Once he departs, Colleen fabricates a story for her family, claiming that Cameron is her boyfriend and that they have been together for 6 years. While her parents are delighted to see her after such a long time, her sister Bonnie senses that something is off. Bonnie wishes to discuss it, but their father prefers not to disrupt the joyful reunion. Later that night, she cannot help but ask Colleen why she has been out of touch for so long. However, the anxious girl evades the question. The next morning, Bonnie pleads with Colleen to share what is troubling her. This time, Colleen contemplates revealing the truth, but before she can speak, Cameron arrives to pick her up. As Colleen nervously gathers her belongings, Cameron converses with her parents. He informs them that he and Colleen are planning to marry soon. Eventually, as they prepare to leave, Bonnie asks where they currently reside. Cameron asserts with confidence that they reside in California, yet Colleen had informed Bonnie that their home is in Oregon. This discrepancy reinforces her suspicion that something is amiss. However, she chooses to remain silent for the time being. In the subsequent scene, Cameron returns home with Colleen and shares a startling revelation. He expresses his intention to marry her and start a family. Unbeknownst to them, Janice is eavesdropping from a nearby location. The following morning, Colleen notices Janice packing and inquires about her destination. Initially, Janice claims she is going to visit her parents, but later admits her desire to end her marriage with Cameron. As she attempts to leave, Cameron intercepts her, insisting that she must return to the house. Despite his insistence, Janice has reached her limit and defiantly departs with her father and Amber. Cameron is left in despair, and when Colleen attempts to comfort him, he reacts with anger, reminding her that she remains his servant. He shouts the word attention, prompting her to quickly undress and stand in the corner. Later, Cameron forcibly drags her into the basement of his shack and secures the door. Before closing it, he ominously informs Colleen that someone else will soon join her. He then drives away, leaving her shivering in the cold rain. Meanwhile, Janice is seen at a church, pleading with God for forgiveness. It is at this moment that she realizes she must rescue Colleen before it is too late. Without delay, she returns home, opens the basement door, and liberates Colleen. She assists the frightened girl in getting dressed and urges her to leave. Colleen protests, believing that Cameron will eventually calm down and forgive her. However, Janice discloses a shocking truth. She and Cameron had previously imprisoned another girl named Marlitz a year ago. Initially, Cameron had portrayed it as a game, but Marlitz's incessant screaming drove him to madness, resulting in her murder. Janice further reveals that they buried her body together, an event that has profoundly impacted her. Later, Cameron arrives home equipped with a shovel, intending to head to the shack, but to his dismay, he finds Colleen missing. Meanwhile, Janice is escorting Colleen to the bus stop, encouraging her to return home and embrace her freedom. When the bus finally arrives, Colleen hesitates, still fearful of being apprehended by the slave trade organization. However, Janice candidly discloses that the narrative surrounding the organization is fabricated and Cameron had no involvement in it. Upon grasping the truth, Colleen experiences a wave of relief. She exits the car and boards the bus. As she makes her way back home, Cameron is depicted in despair, weeping on the floor, having lost both Janice and Colleen. In the concluding scene, it is revealed that Janice confessed everything to the authorities to alleviate her guilt. The police launched an investigation, which ultimately led to Cameron receiving a sentence of 104 years in prison. Conversely, Janice was granted immunity for her testimony against him. Regrettably, Marlitz's body was never found. The film concludes with the police revealing that Colleen was held captive for 2,640 days, equivalent to 7 years.